The topic of today is scope gates and flattening the scope. Let's go. Okay, so let's first see what's the problem and what it means to have scope gates in Ruby. So let's say that we have a variable outside of a class, and then we start defining a class C, where we define another variable inside, then we put s the local variables, then we define a method m, where we have another variable here, we put s again the local variables, we put s again the local variables, and we get all of it. So first of all, you can see that we printed v2 twice, once because of this put s, and the other one is because of this one. So this put s doesn't see v3 and it doesn't see v1. And also, if we instantiate the class and call the method, we see only v3 when we put s here. And the reason for that is that in Ruby, whenever you go across a class or a def or a module keyword, you lose all of the bindings that were outside of that scope. In other words, you have a scope gate. Now, let's say we want to access those variables actually. So in Ruby, there's something that is called informally flattening the scope, which is a way to work around the fact that class, module, and def are gating the scope. So the way it works is that actually blocks in Ruby have access to the bindings outside of them. They actually capture the scope at the time of their definition. So let's say I define a variable here 1, and then I define a lambda that prints the local variables. If we call it, we will see that actually the lambda has access to v1, plus also has access to the variable to which we assign the lambda, and underscore, which is coming from ERB. So we can actually use this trick, the idea that blocks have access to the outer scope, to rewrite what we wrote at the beginning and actually make it work. So again, we have an outside variable here. Then we define a class in a different way. We use a block instead. So this block will have access to what's outside of it. We also define v2. We put as the local variables again. We define a method m, and this method will first define another variable. We'll put as the local variables, and then here again we will put as the local variables. And now we can already see that this put as here has access to both v2 and v1, and this put as here again has the same access to those variables. But also we can see that we can instantiate the class called the method, and this method will have access to all of the variables, the one that is defined inside the method, this one here, and the one outside of the class. And this works because we're using a block that is capturing, actually two blocks, one inside of the other, that are capturing the outer scopes. Now, this is useful, for example, if you need to stub something in a test. Let's say you have a value 1, 2, 3, and then you need to inject an instance of a class that is using this value. Now, of course, you could do something like this, but you wouldn't have access to that value anymore because class is a scope gate. So you could actually do the same with a block, and then you would define a method here. Let's say it's call. This method would just return value. I guess you would do something more sophisticated in your test. And then, of course, you could instantiate this class and pass it in your logic that you're testing. And then you can actually check that, I don't know, the result of calling call, or whatever, the result of calling the logic that is using the instantiated class C is equal to the value, right? For whatever reason, or value times 2, whatever. You can do whatever you want, but you kind of use this value both here for the check in the test, and also inside of the class. I want to show you one more thing, which is class eval and instance eval. So let's say we have, for example, a class C. Now we can add things to the class by opening its scope and then define some new things, of course. But another way of doing it would be to use class eval. So you can do c.class eval, then you use a block, and let's say that we add an attribute reader for the instance variable a. Now, let's say that we have an instance of this class here, And of course, we can access A with the reader method, right? Another thing we could do, let's say we wanted to probe inside of the class, or better, inside of the instance, and change the instance variable A. We can do it with instance eval. So we can do c.instance eval. This takes a scope, and here we can do whatever we want. For example, we can set A to 1, and then we can call c.a, and we would see that we actually probed inside of the instance and changed an instance variable. And that's how you use scopes and blocks in Ruby. Let me know if you have any specific use cases in the comments down below.